Ron, Jones, Holt, and now Ken Rosenthal with us. So, did I lie? I mean, I heard fair territory. You said that you didn't really sleep for the days leading up and the night after. What about last night? Could you give me 6 hours last night?
Yeah, you got 6 hours last night.
Let's
Not
go.
much more, but yeah, I'll get back. It
The
takes a
over
couple of
under was
days
at five
usually.
and a half. I took the over, but it was close.
No, it takes a few days after that, but it's fine. It's fun.
Okay, well, another great column up there because we still have the trickle effect, the aftermath of everything with the trade deadline. So these guys were getting into Eduardo Rodriguez. It's been a great topic for a show like ours with all the former players. So what did you write about, and also your thoughts even to what Brock and Adam were saying, which includes Adam going, hey, I hit a time when I didn't want to go to Philadelphia because I didn't want to platoon, and taxes are a factor. There's a lot of things that go into play here, right?
No question. And what Brock said is absolutely right, that it's a negotiated right. It's in his contract, and he got it in his contract for a reason. If the sole thing here was his family and not disrupting his family, if that was it, then you cannot question it. The thing is, a couple things actually. One, the Tigers say they did talk to him before the trade was made. They were under the understanding, and they had the Dodgers under the understanding, that Eduardo Rodriguez would accept a trade to the Dodgers. And the other thing is, if it's solely about family, if that's it, well, then why are Rodriguez and his agent, Gene Mato, asking for financial and contractual enhancements to make his family more comfortable? I get it, guys, but my lesson from an early stage of my career was to follow the money. And this was certainly something where they wanted something to waive the no trade. Now, that's their right, too, to use the no trade as leverage. But apparently what they asked for, and one of the things they asked for, I reported, another year if he didn't opt out at $20 million. He already is getting 3 years at $49 million if he does not opt out. They wanted another year at 20, 4 years, 69 total if he doesn't opt out, and Dodgers just weren't willing to do that. So it's one of these things where I'm not sure exactly who is to blame and all of that. But I do say this. The Tigers ended up losers. They didn't trade him. They didn't get anything back. They will be unable to make him a qualifying offer if he leaves as a free agent. I mean, yeah, unable to make him a qualifying offer, unable to get draft picks in return. They have to pay him the rest of the year, $4.5 million to play for a losing team. So they were big losers. The Dodgers obviously were losers. They wanted Eduardo Rodriguez, didn't get him. And while you can't call Eduardo a loser here, there are things that are going to follow him because of this. And teams are going to question, hey, why didn't he go from a last place team to, well, not a last place team, but also Ram, to a first place team when it might have been only for 2 months before he opts out? And if he's so loyal to Detroit, why isn't he just staying there? Because most likely he is going to opt out, which is also his right. So it's never just clear cut with these things. And again, I'm not exactly sure what he was told, whether he objected or whether he just preferred his agent to do the objecting on his behalf. Sometimes, guys, I would imagine Adam and Brock could speak to this. You don't want to get into it with your front office. You'd rather your agent get into it with your front office. That's what the agent's paid to do. So I'm not exactly sure, again, what happened. But at the same time, it was an unfortunate set of circumstances, I believe, all around, because to me, it's going to hurt Eduardo in free agency. And I know the way clubs think, and they look at this kind of thing and they question, hey, what's going on there?
Ken, how you doing, man? It's been a while. You
Good,
got the
Adam.
bow tie on. You
Happy
got the bow
birthday,
tie
by the
on,
way.
brother. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Trying to catch up to you. Unfortunate situation with Eduardo. Let's go to a happier situation with my O's. Did they do
Yes.
enough? Everyone is talking about. I mean, the best team in the American League right now. Great. I mean, they put on a great show every night. I love the move with Jack Flaherty. He's throwing today. Did they do enough in the market and get enough to go for it? Because this is their year. People talk about windows. I don't like that window. Windows now. I'm talking about this
Mm-hmm.
year. And the Rangers went in this year. Astros are going back, trying to go back to back, like Tom Amansky. So, did my O's do enough?
The one thing, Adam, I would like to have seen them done was add another reliever. And they didn't do that. They got Fujinami from the Oakland A's, and then they got Flaherty. Good move. They had to get a starter. Their starters are a number of them past innings limits or approaching innings limits, places where they haven't been in their careers, and it's going to be a problem. It is a problem right now. Tyler Wells was demoted to the minor leagues. So Flaherty was a necessity. And when you got Fujinami, you addressed your bullpen in that particular way. But somebody made the point to me right after the deadline, and this was somebody in the industry, an executive, and he said, why is it that the Yankees traded for Keenan Middleton? Why did the Orioles get that guy or someone like him, another reliever? And that is something, yes, they probably should have done. Not even probably. I would say they should have done that. Make that bullpen even stronger. You need help getting to the two guys at the end, the two all-stars, Cano and Bautista. So they came up a little short, in my opinion, but at the same time, getting a starter in this market was really difficult to do. There weren't that many quality starters out there, and there was more demand than supply. There were some teams that got shut out in that market. The Red Sox, Diamondbacks, Reds. So from that perspective, they did well. I would have liked to have seen them done or do just a little bit more.
All right, Ken, we're going from one black and orange to the other coast with the black and orange. The San Francisco Giants not getting anything done. When they're leading the wild card right now, every team around them obviously made some moves to make themselves better. So what do you have on the Giants situation and why they didn't add?
They did bring in A.J. Pollock, who should help. He's not having a good year, but he's a veteran guy, right-handed hitter. Okay. You're right, Brock. They didn't do much at all. And in the days leading to the deadline, I kind of asked some of their people what was going on and was told Brandon Crawford and Thairo Estrada were coming off the injured list. So that would help their middle infield. They were playing rookies in the middle infield. That's not desirable in a pennant race. So they got those two guys back. They were still looking for another infielder who kind of could platoon with those two. And they had a situation where they had a little bit of a surplus of pitching in that they're bulk guys, the guys who start but sometimes are used as followers to openers. They had a surplus of them. I'm talking about Minaya and Stripling and that group, and it was possible that they would trade one of them in a market starved for pitching that we just discussed and get something else in return. Didn't do that. And yeah, you would have liked to have seen them maybe get another bat, do something somewhere, but they felt pretty good about their club. And it's interesting, guys. There were a number of teams where their inactivity really frustrated their fan bases, and I get it. I would put the Twins in that category. I would put the Reds borderline in that category. They maybe should have done more. It's kind of like what Adam was talking about with the Orioles. This is their time. But it was a thin market. That's the one thing we should note. There weren't that many quality players available, and certainly the prices for those players, in the estimation of some clubs, was too high.
Hey, Ken, on the Twins, do you think that they have buyer's remorse and they were so PTSD about the trades that they made last year where they did go for it? I give them credit, right? But they traded away assets, and you documented it well on Fair Territory, right? Cano is one of the best bullpen dudes in the league now with the Orioles. He was traded away in that Jorge Lopez trade. Spencer Steer and Christian Encarnacion Strand. I think there was still a prospect or two I'm missing, but just looking at those three alone, can you imagine what they would look like on the Twins this year?
Right, Scott. And that's a great point. I don't know if it was some combination of buyer's remorse, as you just mentioned, the trades that went awry on them last year, and what happened elsewhere in the AL Central. When you look at this, the Guardians were half game out, and they traded one of their best starting pitchers, Aaron Savali. Traded him for a guy who's going to help them in the future, Kyle Manzardo, first baseman, but he's not going to help them this year. The Tigers traded Lorenzen, went backwards. The Royals made some trades, went backwards. The White Sox made some trades, lots of trades, and went really backwards. So in my view, that dynamic, what was happening in the rest of the division, influenced what the Twins were doing, and it led to a lack of urgency. Why should we expend prospects? We're going to win the division. Now, you can argue you expend prospects to enhance your chances in the postseason and try to win the World Series. Maybe, but they didn't do that. They needed a right-handed bat. They needed more bullpen help, and they did not get it. So it's fair to question. Their position has been all season. We will only be the team we want to be and should be if our two best players, Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa, perform to their career levels. Those guys have not done that. If that happens, the Twins are fine. But it hasn't happened, and maybe you shouldn't be banking on it happening, and maybe you should have reinforced your team to ensure you were in a good place regardless of whether it happens.
Yeah, Ken. Let's
What about
go.
those Sox?
Yeah, like you said, AJ. Let's go to my Sox. Okay, I'm sure you can put the Red Sox in that category as well. I mean, the Red Sox could probably go out and get Shohei Ohtani, and you'd have some fans that were a little mad that they didn't do enough to make the team better. But yeah, talk about the Red Sox. I know they got Urias from the Brewers, but they optioned him down. They've got guys coming, which should help. But give me your thoughts on the Red Sox and where they're headed.
Brock, I've got lots of thoughts on the Red Sox.
Bring them on.
First of all, I was happy to see that they didn't do what they did last year, which I thought was terrible. I did not like their deadline last year. They acquired some players. They traded Vasquez. They were caught in between. And if you were going to trade Vasquez, who was your starting catcher, then you might as well trade JD and Evaldi and get under the luxury tax line. They didn't do that. So effectively, they didn't improve enough and they didn't go backwards enough. They didn't make a call really one way or the other. They kind of tried to thread the needle. It didn't work. This year, they didn't thread the needle or try to thread the needle. They kept their team intact. Now, I like that. I like not trading Duvall. I like not trading Paxton because this is a good club. Now, the real question is, should they have done more to enhance this team? And that is a fair question. In my view, they needed a starter. As I just said, there weren't many starters available at reasonable prices. The Red Sox wanted a controllable starter. Savali was really the only controllable starter that moved. They've got Sale coming back. They've got Whitlock and Howe coming back. They've got Trevor Story coming back at shortstop. That all will help them. One more starter. If they had done that, I feel that they really would have been in good position. Now, I did report today that they were involved in some interesting pursuits. They were one of the teams that at least checked in on Verlander. I don't know that Justin Verlander would have approved the trade to Boston when he really wanted to go back to Houston, but I checked his numbers at Fenway. They're good. They're good at most parks, of course, and that would have been something really mind-blowing to see Justin Verlander in a Red Sox uniform. I don't know that it was ever likely. I don't even know that it ever got to the point where it was a serious discussion. It doesn't seem that it did. The other thing that's interesting to me about what they were up to, they have kind of said, and players have said this, front office people have said this, Alex Cora said it, Justin Turner has meant a ton to their team this year, more than Vasquez did to last year's team. You guys know Justin. He's a leader. He is someone who brings people together, a connector, and he's also having a really good...
Introduced me to my wife.
There you go. He's also having a really good season. So you would think they're not messing around with that guy, but they were talking to Miami about a trade involving Justin Turner. Miami felt it was close, and when it didn't happen, they ultimately turned to Josh Bell and Jake Berger. But the mere fact that they were listening on Justin Turner and talking seriously about a trade involving him surprised me. Now, it's the old thing with front offices now. Every player is a value. We'll talk about any player. We'll listen, and I don't know who the Red Sox were getting back, but I imagine it was something pretty good. So that didn't happen. Probably best for the Red Sox in 2023 that it didn't happen. And I don't have a huge problem with them not doing more because I still believe they have a good team and they're going to get better when these injured players return. A little bit more help would have been preferable, always. But at the same time, I didn't want to see them deconstruct in any way, and there was a threat of that as well, obviously, if they were talking about Turner and Paxton and Duvall.
Okay, so this brings up a very big problem that I have, Ken. It's one thing if you're a team that's going, hey, I want to see how the team does for the next week, right? Like it seems like the Cubs were in that category. Okay, and then your team goes on a run and you're like, I can't sell with the way that they're playing. It's another step in my mind towards just being like stock traders when they go, ooh, what value can we get for this player? Okay, maybe we'll sell. Oh, we can't get that? Okay, now we'll maybe buy. You're like deciding your entire season on what prospect you can get for one player as the Red Sox. And it's the same thing with the Yankees. Brian Cashman's comments were hilarious. Opportunistic sellers, then they didn't get what they want. Opportunistic buyers not seeing what they want there. So they basically are just like, okay, now we're pushing in for this season. Like, that's not how this works. Do you have a problem with the way that some of these front offices are operating now based on one player's value?
I have a problem with the overall hesitancy that you see when teams are in position to win, teams that might not be expecting to be in that position. The Reds qualify, the Orioles qualify, the Diamondbacks qualify. Now, a number of these teams did buy this year, but in my mind, teams are too often hedging their bets. Well, we're not at 70% playoff odds for this year. We want to build something sustainable. No, you don't get to choose when your window opens. If your window is open, or if it cracks open like it did for the Cubs this year, in my mind, go. You need to try. And no, it might not work out, but my goodness, this is an entertainment business. You're supposed to give your fans the most compelling product you can. And too often, the GMs, whether it's out of fear, whether they're trying to impress everyone with their discipline and restraint, or whether they just outright are worried about their jobs, they hedge their bets. And that is the problem I have with the sport in general. The Yankees' situation is different. As I wrote the other day, they are a team that kind of had nowhere to go, which is damning in itself. You're the New York Yankees at the deadline, and you're really not good enough to be buyers, and you don't have good enough players to be sellers, or at least your players are not assets on the trade market. That is an incredible indictment of where the Yankees are. But in general, I would agree, Scott, teams and front offices, they don't go for it hard enough. And there were more incentives built into the CBA, the playoff format. I would like to see the sport maybe go even further.
Okay, and then one more, because during trade deadline day, you released that Max Scherzer story, and you can listen to why it came out at that very time, because I know you were sitting on it due to Max's request, right, on his comments on basically the Mets telling him that they weren't going to do much in the offseason. What are your thoughts on what he said then versus, and we'll get into it on our show later, what Steve Cohen said yesterday, which basically in my mind took one step back from what Max said, because Max said like they couldn't promise him, and you can tell this better, the aggressiveness would be there in the offseason. But Cohen's kind of saying like, oh no, we're still going to do things and we might be good next year. We might just not get the top end star player because that didn't work out for us. What did you take of the mix after what Max said?
I didn't see them as being on different pages. They were maybe saying it a different way. And Cohen basically said also, hey, what Max said is what I told him, that we're not going after upper echelon free agents. We're going to be in a little bit different place next year. Now, if you're Max, or if you're Justin Verlander, and you're hearing that, and that's not what you signed up for. You aligned with Steve Cohen because his vision was to build a winner right away. That's what you wanted. And now they're saying, well, we'll be good next year, but we're not going to be trying as hard in free agency. Now, that's a big difference in Max's mind, and perhaps in Justin's mind as well, to going in a direction that they were going in before. And that is why Scherzer was willing to waive his no-trade clause. I imagine Verlander had the same kinds of feelings about it. And if you're Steve Cohen, you're not going to sit there and say we're not trying next year, but they're certainly not trying at the same level. And that is the problem that Scherzer had with this. Whoa, you told me this, and we're doing that? Then, okay, different equation. I'm willing to waive my no trade. And it's a little bit semantics. I get that. But at the same time, you're never going to see Cohen or Billy Epler, the general manager, say, we're not trying next year. We're not going to be good. But they are saying we won't have the same playoff odds entering the season. That tells you all you need to know about where they're going with 2024. And they've been pretty hoping. We're pointing more towards 2025 and 26. Whether the New York Mets should be doing that after all that they did and the things that they tried to accomplish, that's a fair question. Was this the right path? Should they have kept going? I kind of like what they did, but at the same time, let's not pretend they're not going to be at the same level next year. They're not even hiding that.
Yeah, and Mets fans don't wish about Ohtani. Like that's not happening. Ken, great to have you on, and great work this week. Obviously, following everything that you were doing. I know it was hectic as hell, and we enjoyed all of the coverage.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate you.
Thanks, Ken.
Ken Rosenthal's Fair Territory post-deadline special is up there. It's available now, and it's free $99. You don't pay a dime. Go to YouTube. Apple, Spotify, however you want to watch it
Hi.
or hear it.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a lot there for you to absorb. Okay,
course.
a full hour of trade deadline post-mortem, whatever you want to call it, aftermath from Ken. It's great stuff. We'll swing back on Stadium and talk to Taylor McGregor about Brock Star's Chicago Cubs. Will they score 20 runs?